William,
Yes?
let's bring in our next guest, Michael Bogart, Mind Cuisine. Hello, sir.
Hey, good to see you
nice
again,
to see
Chuck.
you. Last time you were here, we were talking about your book and videos on Islam.
Correct.
But today we're going to be talking about the 45-minute Bible.
Right, that's right.
How is that even possible?
Well, I was on staff at a local church here, and our pastor was kind of a guy that really gets into the text, and he does a real in-depth job in terms of his sermons. And
So he was boring.
well, I don't know, no, not at all.
Oh.
But we had this little thing back and forth. He was the in-depth guy, and I was the overview guy. And he said, well, I suppose you could do this in a couple of weeks. And I said, I can do the Bible in one sermon. And so it was kind of a challenge.
And you did it.
Well, I made an attempt, let's put it that way. But and out of that, I thought, you know what, this is something people need, because I had so many people walking out after that sermon saying, I had no idea how it all fit together. You know, most people, if they're churchgoers, they get bits and pieces, you know, and that's fine, but they don't really get the big picture of how it all works from beginning to end. So I thought, well, you know what, I need to make a video.
Okay, that says the 45-minute Bible.
Right.
But I got a feeling, Michael, that you can tell us a lot of it in a couple minutes.
I can.
Let me hear it.
Okay, well, for example, how many testaments are there in the Bible? 2, right? Or at least the Christian Bible. But then we're talking...
The Old and the New.
The Old and the New Testaments, right? I mean, this is some basic stuff, but a lot of people don't know it.
Right.
We have how many books in the Protestant Bible? 66. Roman Catholics have 73 because they've got the Apocrypha, that section that Protestants don't have. Eastern Orthodox have actually more in their Apocrypha. So, you know, when you're talking about the Bible, you have to understand what you're talking about. You're talking about the Protestant Bible, you're talking about the Catholic sort of expanded canon, and so on.
So do you have the 45-minute Bible for all the different Bibles?
No.
Or is this an overview of all of them?
This works for all of them.
Oh, gosh.
I mean, you know, obviously in 45 minutes I can't spend a lot of time in any one place. But
Do you start out in the Garden of Eden?
Yes, I do, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
and what are you in?
Well, the book of Revelation, of course.
Of course.
Yeah, right. But the whole point is to try to give some kind of a picture of how the whole thing flows from beginning to end. So I arbitrarily divided the Bible into 8 subsections. 4 for the Old Testament, 4 for the New. I mean, it could have been done other ways, but that's something I just decided to do. It worked for my format and my purposes. And so that's what I try to do. I try to take a little bit of time to do each one of the 8 sections, what's in there, what the purpose was, and so forth.
4 things in each book that you found to be the biggest parts of the book?
Well, not necessarily
The
4
biggest
things.
message of the book?
Tried to find the biggest themes of the Bible, what the purposes were, some of the historical flow of why things happened the way they did. And a lot of people have found it very helpful.
Okay. Go ahead. I want you to start me out in the Garden of Eden here for a second. All right? Let me hear how this would start out.
Well, I start out with a period of what I call the beginnings. It's, you know, that first section of the Bible that talks about, really the Jews call it Torah. Torah is the first 5 books of the Old Testament, Genesis through Deuteronomy. And so I talk about that. That's called the law section of the Bible, or the Pentateuch is what scholars call it. But it forms the foundation. If you can think of a house, the Torah or the first 5 books form like the foundation that everything's going to be built on. So I talk about what that was all about. A lot of it contains stories, you know, Adam and Eve, but Noah's in there, Abraham, you know, the other patriarchs. And it goes up until really through the time of Moses. So that's the first section.
Right.
Then I go on and I talk about the historical books, you know, books like 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings, some of those books that talk about the history of ancient Israel. Then I spend a lot of time talking about the historical flow there. Then the next section I talk about is the poetry and wisdom section. So that's Psalms and Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Song of Solomon, which is, you know, one of those books that people are very interested in because it has some sexual kinds of things in it. So we talk about that.
Whoa. People are interested in sexual things in the Bible?
There's a lot of sexual things in the Bible.
Well, I know there is, but you're not supposed to be interested in it, are you?
Well, you'll be surprised how many people read those sections. Song of Solomon is a great, interesting book. And, you know, it's not necessarily for kids either. So there's a lot of stuff in there. And that's the thing I think is intriguing about the Bible to many people, is that it's a very real book. It talks about real things that people are interested in, real issues of life. That's why it tends to be a continuous bestseller. So, yeah.
I want to know what people are saying after they see the 45-minute Bible.
They talk about how the coherence of how it really holds together. They're amazed that something in Genesis can really relate to something in Revelation. They're amazed at the continuing themes that go from beginning to end. Because the Bible probably has about a 14 or 1500 year span from the first writing down of the first books to Revelation when it was written down. So, to maintain some themes over 1500 years or so is pretty astounding.
A lot of people think that the Bible is like the best fairy tale ever written. That maybe it was written just to teach people
Lessons.
lessons, and
Yeah.
maybe that it's not so magical.
Well, the thing about it is, I think the Bible's a very real book. I mean,
Oh, I'm sure it is.
it has connections with history. In fact, I just got back from a tour to Israel in January. And it's amazing when, somebody who knows the Bible going there and seeing actual things that, physical evidence for, this is where this actually happened. I mean, for me, I was standing in the valley of Elah, where David and Goliath, that whole thing there, and you look behind you, and there's a ridge where the Israelites would have been standing, and then there's the opposite ridge where the Philistine army would have been, and then in the middle is where the confrontation would have been, and you're thinking, my goodness, this is real.
Wow.
This really happened
Wow.
right here on this spot,
Wow, something that you've heard about probably since you're a
Well,
child.
if you've been to Sunday school as a kid, you remember the flannel graphs, the teacher moved the little figures around. In your mind, that's kind of what you're thinking, and then when you're standing there, you're going, oh no, this was real flesh and blood stuff that happened. So it was kind of an amazing thing. But there's a lot of evidence to show that the Bible's not just stories and fairy tales, but that there's a lot of historical connection there. So.
Now, what do you do when you run into people that know the Bible better than you?
I don't often find a lot of people like that. I mean, I don't want to be,
Or their interpretation is different than yours.
A lot of people have opinions about the Bible. I find that a lot of people's opinions about the Bible aren't necessarily based in actual facts about the Bible. I mean, they've heard things, they've gone on the internet, they've read some things. But
It's been presented to them in certain ways.
right, and
Right.
of course, everybody's entitled to their opinion. But and I'm not saying I'm the world's greatest scholar or anything like that. But what I do find is a lot of biblical ignorance out there. For this book that most people have in their houses, most people don't even know what's in it.
Right.
And that's kind of sad. And that's
Well,
kind of the
here's
genesis
the
of this.
thing. It's not an easy read.
No, it's
You
not.
pick up a Bible and with all good intentions, you want to read through it, and all of a sudden you lose it's not 45 minutes.
No.
You'd be lucky to read the Bible in 45 days.
Well, that's right. There are some programs where you read it through in a year. So, I mean, it's a challenging
Most
thing.
programs, if you're looking at the churches, right?
That's right. That's right. But, yeah, and I understand there's a couple of issues there. One is translation. I mean, we have to read an English translation. Understand that the original languages of the Bible are Hebrew for the Old Testament with a little bit of Aramaic in the later portions. And then, of course, Greek for the New Testament. Well, who reads those languages today? Just a few scholars. So we have to have an English translation of that, or whatever language we're talking about. Most people still have the King James Bible, which isn't even contemporary English. It's English of the 1600s.
Right.
So, you've got that problem working as well.
I just got rid of a Bible in pidgin English.
Yes.
Like pigeon talk,
You got rid of it?
Dot Jesus, real one cool brother.
Why'd you get rid of that?
Well, I had the great book giveaway of 2014.
Oh, man, I understand.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of good contemporary English versions of the Bible that make it a lot more accessible.
Right.
But then the second thing you're working against is the cultural differences and the time differences, and there requires a little bit of training or a little bit of reading up to understand what they were thinking back in the Greco-Roman world in the New Testament, or the Palestinian Jewish world of Jesus' day, or even further back, the kingdom of David and Solomon 1,000 years before Jesus. So some of that requires a little bit of study, but on the other hand, the problems are the same that people face. The issues are the very same.
That's
so
what's the strangest part about
it
it.
really is. Things don't really change for human experience.
The predictions made in the Bible, does some come true?
Well, you can see that in some of the Old Testament passages, some of them did come true already in the New Testament.
Like?
Well, like all the prophecies about Jesus being the Messiah, born in Bethlehem, the seed of David, even some of the stuff that happened at his crucifixion from Psalm 22. So a lot of things you can look back and say, my goodness, it was right, it was right on.
Wow.
So,
Where can people find this stuff? It's very interesting. I love having you on. Where can people find the 45-Minute Bible?
Well, on my website, mindcuisine.com, mindcuisine.com. It's an educational resource site about world religion. So I have more than the 45-Minute Bible. I've got my video on Islam, my books on Islam. I tried to design some videos and books on the things that people are always asking me questions about. So Mormonism, Jehovah's Witnesses, the New Age, some of the things that people always want to know. What are these people doing and what do they believe and that sort of thing. So that's where you can find this. It's also something that can be used. This can be used in a college classroom, which I use at West Hills College. It's not sectarian. It's just fact-based. But churches can also use it as well for their educational programs.
Book of Mormon's coming to Fresno. Are you going to go see it?
I've thought about it. I haven't really quite made up my mind yet.
Michael Bogart, it's always really cool to talk to you.
Fabulous. We'll see you again. Thank you.
All right, we're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back on The Buzz. Stick around.